How's it going, guys? Today, I want to talk about the importance of gesso. Now, for surfaces such as wood and unprimed canvas, gesso is important because what it does is it seals the surface so that when you oil paint on top of it, it won't sink in. And usually, for instance, if I were to paint oil right onto this wood, what's gonna happen is it's such a porous, thirsty surface that it will suck up the binder from the paint, soak in, and it won't be archival. Eventually that oil will eat away at this wood, and in some time it'll crack and just kind of completely destroy the wood eventually, So you want your paintings to last and you want it to glide across the surface like butter. What you're gonna want to do is hit it with some gesso. Now, once you have your gesso, you can really use clear gesso, black gesso, white gesso. There's very cheap kinds and there's some nicer, more expensive kinds. But I just have some certified artist gesso right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply it to the surface. And let's go ahead and do it. Put it on there. Don't want to put too much on at a time like I just did, but it's okay. Sometimes what I like to do is make a little messed up faces. Like, check this one. It's smiling. But now it's kind of frowning a little bit. Now see, with this kind of gesso, it's not super thick. It's a little bit on the cheaper side, but that's okay. It basically just means we're going to need to do multiple layers because really what we want is for the paint to glide across the surface. So, and a good thing to do when you are gessoing, kind of practice your brush strokes a little bit. Get a feel for, doing things a specific way when it comes to your brush mark making. Sometimes I'll just do parallel strokes like that. When I say parallel, I mean parallel to the surface. Other times it'll be more perpendicular. And see the difference of how when you hold the brush perpendicular, it really pushes things way more. Whereas if you do it this way, more parallel to the surface, paint glides across it and will be applied more opaquely. Alright, anyway, let's go into super speed mode. So I've applied the first layer. As you can see, this is not one of the thicker, more opaque gessos, so it's going to take a couple layers, I think. A lot of times people want to apply very thin, but what you can do, see, I don't mind if the surface has a little bit of personality to it, but what you can do if you do want to get it super glass smooth later on is sand it down. It's not too bad to sand gesso. Now, of course, if you were doing oil primer or sanding oil, that's when it gets a little bit dangerous and you need to make sure you're wearing a mask because oil pigment is not something you want to breathe in. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and then come back and do the next layer. Okay, so I know I said that I like the surface with a little bit of personality to it, but I did want to show you guys. So with acrylic gesso specifically, sometimes when it's, if you apply it like I did, you just pour it on, it's kind of thick. What you can do is when it's pretty much halfway dry, it moves across the surface differently and it's kind of easier to spread out. So instead of just letting it dry completely, what I wanted to show you is that when it's about halfway dry, you can go back into it and just hold and glide more parallel than anything else and really allow the motion and gravity of the brush itself to do all the work for you. Don't push too hard into it because this is really just about allowing the coat to be as even and clean as possible. Right now, that's not necessarily what you might want to do, but this is the pretty standard way of going about doing things at first. So go ahead and lay it down on there like that. Anyway, once this coat's dry, I'll go ahead and put another one on. And it's important to remember that acrylic gesso is good as far as archival things go, but it's not always been around. Now, what people used to do when it came to sealing the surface was they would prime their surfaces with rabbit skin glue, for instance, And that would be what they use to size the surface. And then after they put the rabbit skin glue on it, then they would put oil primer on. An oil primer is something that can be applied once you have sized your surface. So if I wanted to do an oil primer on top of this, which a lot of times will have a lead base, then I would want to size it first. And they have PVA size and other sorts of glues which have been made and to, you know, kind of basically try to do the same thing. But let me tell you right now, especially when you're painting on linen, there's really nothing else like some good old rabbit skin glue. I'll do a tutorial on that soon enough. Okay, so I decided to take the action outside because the sun is very useful for many things besides photosynthesis. It also is a great way to help dry gesso. So that'll just about do it for me for today. Remember, gesso is great. You can put it on your shoes, a car, a shirt, a skull if you wanted to. Really anything, gesso anything, and then you can paint on top of it. There's clear gesso, black gesso, thick, crazy, nice gesso, and then stuff like this. That's not so great, but you know, it all works. You just need a couple more layers. I only did 2 layers, but if you really want a glass smooth surface, what you can do is put like 4, maybe even 5 or more layers on it, and then sand into it. So with some really nice fine-tooth sandpaper, sand into the surface, but make sure you put a bunch of layers on there, because if you don't, what's gonna happen is you'll end up just completely cutting back into the surface, and everything you did will be a complete failure. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, happy painting, and that is not mine. Bye-bye.